What's going on, everybody? Josh with Survive First Contact, and today I wanted to go over some emergency planning considerations based around a scenario of you are at work and some kind of emergency out in the world happens. As some of you know, moved out to Oahu, the island of Oahu, Hawaii, with my wife here a few weeks ago, and right as I landed, the Maui wildfires were going on. Just terrible event. Praying for those folks out there, still in recovery. And then what a lot of people don't realize on the national scale, there was a fire here on Oahu the week after that burned over 500 acres through an overnight period. So just drives home the point that you need to have an emergency plan in place if you're going to survive and thrive in these kinds of situations. For most working class Americans like us, when something happens, unless it happens on the weekend, you're probably going to be at work. So your emergency plan is going to be planned obviously before you go to work, and then you discover some kind of emergency is going on, then you have to enact your plan to get home. So the three main things I want to cover today are receiving emergency notifications. The second part is how are you going to maneuver and navigate from the time you get that emergency notification to get home. And then three, what kind of sustainment things, considerations do you need to make it home. We're not going to go too deep into go bags, bug out bags, get home bags. I have posts on that, as well as vehicle preps. I can post the links to those in my stories after this. You can go check those out separately. But again, we're going to cover the kind of the crisis planning here. So the first part of this is alerts and notifications. In order to discover that some kind of emergency, crisis, natural disaster is happening, you need to be able to receive alerts, receive information that something is going on. And you need multiple means to be able to do that, multiple redundant means in any of your plans and equipment when it comes to survival, tactical, what have you. You want multi-use items and you want redundancy in your capabilities to do all of these things. So that aside. So alerts. So everything from social media, like on your cell phone, first and foremost, don't discount the usefulness, the utility of social media. There's a lot of, fake news and all kinds of wild stuff going around on social media. However, things like neighborhood groups and local news stations will post things on social media. The fire that occurred on Oahu here, I learned about it through a military housing page before I saw it on the local news. So don't discount that. Just don't use social media as your sole source of information. Go confirm it with other sources. Other kinds of alerts. Sticking with the tech and the cell phone. Here in Honolulu, the Department of Emergency Services has an app you can download for your phone that will push notifications based on what you select that you want to be notified of. Everything from traffic accidents, traffic conditions, water main breaks, fires, and then things for here like beach conditions, like bad weather or hazardous marine life on the beach. So things like that to be able to go and get local information, really important. And again, those are tech and like cell phone, internet needed for those. Moving on to like non-internet, a simple form of a radio, specifically like a survival radio. If internet is down and something like power is down, something like a crank radio, a survival radio, where you can put on a local station and receive those emergency notifications, super useful. So having multiple means to receive that information to say, hey, here's what's happening. Figure out what is going on, where it's happening, because where it's happening and the severity of the situation is going to determine your next steps of how you're going to maneuver and navigate, and how you're going to get home, and how long that's going to take you, and what you need along the way. So that covers like alerts and notifications. The next part is the maneuver and the navigation part. Now, if we're talking about a get home from work plan, this all begins with your distance to work and your means of commute. Most Americans drive to work unless you're in a major city. An average American in the United States commutes roughly 20 miles in one direction. Obviously that can vary greatly, and the times of commute can change based on traffic conditions and local conditions and things like that. But majority of Americans are going to drive to work. So when you're talking about, okay, I've got an alert and I need to be able to initiate my get home plan. Based on road conditions or what's happening, it's either going to be in your vehicle or on foot. Those are how we're going to kind of separate those things. And then same with navigation. Navigation is going to be either in your vehicle or on foot, and with tech and without tech to assist you within that navigation. So this whole thing starts with, like we said, how far are you from work to your house? What is your average commute distance, and how far do you need to be able to move, either in your vehicle or on foot, to get home? So when we talk about navigation, we need to look at routes. In the military and patrolling, we plan primary and alternate routes going in and out of an area, and ideally our in route does not overlap with our out route, and vice versa for our alternate routes. So the idea behind that is that if you are attempting to take a route and that route is compromised, you can switch to your other route, and your alternate route is not going to intersect with that main route that was compromised by whatever factor. So you need to consider that when you're traveling to get home. Based on where the emergency is, can you take your normal commute route home? Is the road passable? Is it available? Or is traffic at a standstill because everybody goes home that way? So having an alternate route planned, basically going anywhere, but specifically in this case, having at least 2 routes planned in and out from where you're trying to go is crucial. Next, looking at overall distance. Is it 2 miles from your workplace, or that average commute distance 20 miles from your workplace to home? And then are you in some kind of physical shape and can carry the things you need for 2 miles versus that 20 miles if you can't travel in your vehicle, considering that as well. Navigation. We live in the age of tech. Absolutely use tech to help you navigate. Lots of mapping apps will give you things like traffic and emergency conditions. Absolutely use that as an asset when you're trying to look at your routes, plan where you're going, see what the route looks like, do that route recon digitally before you physically go and either try and do a recon or get stuck in an area because you're trying to transit that area without knowing what's in the area. So for tech, again, we have our maps, like digital maps, GPS. A lot of vehicles are GPS nav enabled now, so GPS in the vehicle, GPS in your cell phone, live maps, and then offline maps. Highly suggest if you do a lot of off-grid things, or you, like me, plan for contingencies and want to plan for the grid, meaning I'll say the internet, the data grid to be down, not the entire electrical grid, but the data grid just to be down. You can download mapping applications such as the Gaia app, which is what I use. You can download maps from the app and store them offline so that if you don't have that data connection, you still have a map of your local area on your phone. So long as your phone has power, you can access those maps. So there's your tech options with and without data connectivity. Going with your non-tech options, a good road atlas stored in your vehicle, or at least the state where you live, and if you're in mainland continental United States, the states all the way around that state, that border that state. Good idea to have maps of those if you don't have an overall road atlas. And if you're going to navigate on foot, highly suggest either a 1 to 50,000 or lower scale map. So that the map, a topographic map of 1 to 50,000, 1 to 25, 1 to 24,000, one of those. So it's at a usable scale that you could determine terrain as you're moving on foot. But again, without that tech option, you're looking at paper maps out of that road atlas, which is good for using your little finger here and tracing your routes, and you paralleling roads basically if you're on foot, or even in a vehicle, staying off main roads but paralleling them based on the map. That's fine. Going into your topographic map, the sites MyTopo and CalTopo. CAL Topo is the CalTopo option. You can print topographic maps at whatever scale they have available from those places. Highly suggest having a topographic map along with a compass and a protractor in your vehicle, because if you're going to have to navigate on foot, you're forced out of your vehicle somehow, or you can't use the route with your vehicle and you have to hoof it on foot. Definitely preferable to have a map that is going to depict the terrain accurately and to a scale that you can really see down to detail. Elevation changes, water features, things like that you're either going to want to take or avoid based on walking on foot. And that is more if you're going to cross country it and not just parallel roads. In an emergency situation, you may not want to parallel major roads because that's where everybody is going to be. So an off the beaten path or a more cross-country route might be preferable to you. So all this to say, you need to look at the map, the route overall from your work to get back home. what is the distance? Is it feasible for you to make it on foot at all, based on the supplies you have, your own physical fitness, and the situation? If not, hopefully, like I said, hopefully you can drive your vehicle out of the situation, but having routes planned, primary and alternate routes, is huge. And then selecting a route based on that alert that you got based on some kind of alerting system. So yeah, we've kind of covered alerts, navigation, and maneuver based on foot, based on vehicle, and then tech, no tech options for navigation. Lastly, we'll kind of cover sustainment. Again, we're not going through all the different kinds of bags and things that you need to be able to have. However, there's no reason that in a vehicle, minus maybe a motorcycle or something like a very, very small, like a smart car, who even has those anymore, to not have a case of water that's 24 16-ounce bottles of water, which equates to 3 gallons of water, and a day's worth of food. So 3 meals or your day's worth of caloric intake of food in your vehicle. Obviously, if you have to walk your way home across that average commute distance in America of 20 miles or less, you're going to need sustenance along the way. Having that stuff stored in your vehicle, obviously you don't have to carry it if it's stored in your vehicle, so just have it in there. You always have water and food enough to sustain you for at least a day. And you've probably eaten that day if the emergency comes in through the middle of the day, so you're probably not going to need all 3 meals for that same day, but at least 3 meals or 1 day's worth of food per person staged in that vehicle based on how many people ride in that vehicle daily is a good benchmark for calories to have stored in there. And like I said, a case of 24 bottles of water is 3 gallons of water. In a movement environment, if you're forced to move out on foot and you're carrying a bag that you packed, military uses a rule of thumb that you're going to burn through about a quart of water an hour in sweat, and that includes electrolytes that are going with it. So you need a way to be able to replenish water either from your vehicle or to carry the water with you, or have your means to filter and either chemically or physically purify your water, be it through boiling, iodine tablets, bleach, what have you. You need a way to procure water if you can't carry enough water, either the size of your bag or your physical fitness, whatever. If you can't carry enough water to move that average 20 miles or less, you need a way to purify water, and then you also need to plan your route such that you cross a body of water where you can procure it. Otherwise, if you're in an urban area, getting to a store or something like that may or may not be feasible, but hopefully it is if that's your only option to replenish your water and your calories. But yes, so kind of rule of thumb, I use at least a gallon of water per person per day to plan for that are going to be in that vehicle, as well as 1 day's worth of calories stored in the vehicle per person per day. Those are kind of your planning parts, and then you can add things to your bag you're going to carry with you if you're moving out on foot. If you have to get away from your vehicle, grab whatever will fit in your bag and whatever you can physically carry, and then your sustainment plan alters from there. Last thing that a lot of people don't think about into the sustainment plan is footwear. So based on what you do for work, are you going to be in appropriate attire and have foot gear that's going to enable you to walk home that distance? It's a good idea, regardless what you do for work, have a good, comfortable pair of adventure shoes, I call it. So hiking boots, running shoes, whatever you're comfortable in, that are broken in, that you know are comfortable, and that preferably you've moved in that foot gear before, wearing your bag or whatever it is you're going to wear, so you have that extra weight on you to know how those shoes feel and that they're not going to rub you raw, or that you're going to be able to move that distance with that foot gear on. That's all I have for now, guys, without getting into the weeds of anything. But again, crisis situation, main things to consider. You need ways to receive alerts about emergency information, what's going on, where is the emergency happening, so you can avoid it and then plan accordingly. The second part, how are you going to move or maneuver, and then how are you going to navigate based on your means of maneuver, and then based on, do you have technology, internet, do you not have internet, do you not have electricity, do you have those analog versions of things like paper maps and a written out plan to get you home, and then do you have the things to sustain you on that trip home? Like I said, planning for at least a day's worth of food and water per person stored in that vehicle, and then be able to divvy up among bags based on people, how many people are with you, to be able to start that trek home in your staged, comfortable attire and shoes to do it. That's all I got for now, guys. Shoot me questions if you have them. We'll expand on all these topics on future posts. Until then, stay safe out there. Have a good one, guys.